Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time it is where you are. My name is Odie Hawkins, and these are my books. I'm doing a international book tour, book selling tour of these books. And this evening, I thought this is our fourth evening. I keep saying evening. I forget that other people is morning for some other people. So don't worry about it. It's still the day. I thought I would read from one of the books, which is something I haven't done thus far. I have Zola Salena behind the camera doing her superb videotaping of the event. And incidentally, once again, she's a very visual person to be a person who wears glasses, because she's always photographing things and taking pictures. I'm going to read some excerpts from this book called Men Friends. Men Friends. On my left is my friend Palmer Mitchell. We went to high school together 50 years ago, can you imagine? On my right is my friend Rob Vernon. We've been knowing each other for at least 45 years, so I think of them as two of my best men friends. I got the idea of doing men friends from listening to a lot of women talk about their girlfriends. And I've never heard anybody say, well, men friends. So I got this idea to write this book about men friends. And here we go. I won't read a whole lot, but just a bit. This is the prologue. To the friends who have been written over and under, and to the ones who were not, I'd like to paraphrase some remarks. It has always been the custom for those who want to gain the favor of a friend to do so by offering gifts which they think are the most valuable, or in which they know a friend will take special delight. In this way, friends are often presented with cars, clothes, gems, wine, beautiful and intelligent women, and other things. In my desire, however, to offer my friends a humble testimony of my love and goodwill, I have been unable to find anything among my possessions which I hold so dear or esteem so highly as the knowledge I have of my friends, gained from a constant study of their habits and attitudes. I have diligently scrutinized their actions, and herein I offer the results of those observations. Although I consider this work to be unworthy of my friends' acceptance, I know that my confidence in their sense of fair play assures me that they will eventually receive the work in the light that it was written, honestly. I haven't sought to decorate the work with long, complicated phrases or high-sounding words or any of those other superficial attractions that another writer would have used to embellish his stuff. I don't want novelties and tricks to obscure the weight that I think my men friends deserve. Nor would I like to have it misunderstood or considered presumptuous on the part of someone as low on the pole as I am, that these paragraphs and sentences are attempts to reroute the affairs of my friends. No, none of that. In the same way that artists have always stationed themselves in the valleys in order to draw mountains, or hiked up the mountains to take a peek at the plains, this is what I've tried to do. I pray that my men friends will accept this in the spirit that it is offered, and if they choose to read it, will recognize my great desire to see them continue to reap the good fortune that their lives deserve. This goes back to when I lived on Bowen Avenue in Chicago on the south side, and I knew guys with names like the ones I'll read. Even at 13, 14, and 15, We were much too individualistic to be called a gang. Bobo, Burks, Leo, sometimes went into imaginative self-hatred, alias Tony DiMedro. Billy Woods, Herb Cross, Bruce, Mooney, Johnny Fox, Bernard Kelly, and a few others who lived in the same neighborhood and hung out on the same corners. Some of the least informed thought we were a gang because we spent a lot of time together. But that was a result of them being unable to penetrate the esoteric haze surrounding our relationships. There were times, to be honest, when we didn't really know what was happening either. Mm-hmm. We stood on the corners rapping and signifying, "You know what, man? Your mama's so ugly she can't even catch a cold." And doo-wopping. Whoa. Do-do-do, do-do-do, wop, do-do-do, do-do-do, wop, do-do-do. Oh man, I'm really off. I hope you didn't hear me. Anyway, and strengthening each other and the bonds between us without fully realizing that we were doing that or why. Bobo, for example, could build a lot of strength in you. Bobo, a close second to the late Nat King Cole in appearance, but much darker, stockier, with tree trunk legs that were bent from the pelvis to the ankle. Yeah, Bobo could build a little bunch of strength in you. How much did he weigh? 155, 58? And at the time, all ghetto heart and muscle. Yeah, Bobo could build a bunch of strength in you. One of the ways he did it was to hit on you. Physically, not romantically. You looked up at me like I... Physically, not romantically. We had a little macho number that Bo loved. There was no official name for it. It could have been called satirically shouldering a load or taking it from Brother Bo or something like that. Yeah, Bobo could build a heap of strength in you if you weren't afraid of having your arm beaten into their shoulder sockets. No, we didn't have an official name for it, but that didn't mean anything because deep down we all knew that it was survival of the fittest game and the rules were simple. What we did was this. A group would form a circle, two people would get into the center of the circle and punch on each other's shoulders until one of them quit. The unwritten rules of the game were that you should only punch the shoulders. There was no referee and no penalties for missing the shoulder and punching the jaw, like there was no one on the sidelines who'd wave a red flag and say, "Hey, that's a jaw shot. You just fouled that man." No, none of those nice things happened. One had to be careful and keep a stiff jab out front. We were taking our aggressions out on each other. Bobo did it spectacularly. Maybe he had more hostility than the rest of us, whatever. He was probably the hardest hitting middleweight on the south side at that point in time, and there were some hard hitters around. Bobo performed knockouts on shoulders. We had days when everybody's shoulders were semi-narcotized from Bobo's hammer hands. The brother absolutely loved to punch. He could take one too. We leave the circle for a moment. Someone told Bobo that this man at the stick hall, he was never called anything but the stick hall, had been harassing his older brother, a known junkie. And what was he going to do about it? Me and somebody else trailed him to the stick hall just to see what was going to go down. Never one to waste words, he stomped in and asked, "Which one of you motherfuckers been fucking with my brother?" "Who in the fuck is your brother?" "James Lee." In the midst of the sly looks, hip undercurrent laughter and stuff, this deep, deep voice says, "I guess I'm the one you want. I stuffed my boot in that little bastard's ass, just the way I'm going to do you if you don't get the fuck out of here." Bobo couldn't have been older than 15. The man was at least 30. Rock hard from the prison iron yard. Nasty, mean, big. Bobo tore his ass up. It seemed that all of the frustration he'd been holding in, boxing us to death on the shoulders, came out. He tore that dude's ass up. I'm sure he knocked him out about 3 times before he let him fall, and then speared him with a trio of left jabs before he hit the floor. It was, to coin a cliche, awesome. Yeah, the brother loved to punch. And he loved to drink that chemical shit they poured down our throats in the ghetto. And he had fierce dreams in addition to punching power. Some balmy summer Southside evenings after we had boxed, played baseball, talked cliche shit to the neighborhood sex pots, smoked a couple of joints, and done a half dozen other non-productive things, we'd sit on the strip of greenery that paralleled South Parkway, King Drive now, drinking this chemical mixture and talking about Europe. Europe was the scene for us because our fathers, uncles, brothers and friends had been over there. Asia meant the Royal Canton Cafe, and Africa was only a pork chop outlined in a geography book. And besides, they didn't have big-time blondes like the ones we saw in the movies. Yeah, man, France got to be a hip place. You heard Zulu last night, didn't you? Talking about them French broads giving him money and stuff. Bird went over there. Yeah, Bird went over there, and they dug the shit out of him. Birds and Miles and Diz, too. It can't be too bad if they dig Miles, Diz, and Bird. Bobo also took pride in speaking a little Spanish. I think he picked it up from a Mexican busboy doing a 3-day sentence as a pearl diver. That's what they called dishwashers at the time. Pearl diver. And knew something about the nature of philosophical thought. Fuck it, it ain't about nothing. That was his philosophical statement. He would make whenever he was dealing with the core of something that was too deep for any of us to cope with, like, what is death? Or what is life, really? I'm sure I wasn't the only one to ask him during those days when our shoulders were throbbing from the pain. One dude, a recent addition, actually fainted once. Bo, you ever think about boxing for a living? Hey, not if I have to stop smoking this good smoke and drinking this good pluck. Years later, after we had diaspored, strolling through a section of Washington Park where we used to take girls for heavyweight kissing feeling sessions, I spotted Bobo sprawled at the base of a tree. He was snoring softly, an empty wine bottle leaning drunkenly against the tree, flies buzzing around his wine-sweetened lips. Bobo. I stood over him for a few minutes, both shoulders suddenly aching from his remembered sledgehammer shots, undecided about waking him or not. What if he wanted to come out of his stupor for a little shoulder thumping? After watching the flab around his midsection heave and wobble for a few minutes, I decided to leave him alone. I strolled away feeling sad about him, for a few minutes, my shoulders throbbing. I looked back at him and laughed out loud. How could you feel sorry for a motherfucker who could hit you so hard you felt it 25 years later? Oh man, these are my men friends. I'm going to give you one more short one. This is a man who became a friend on stage, so to speak. A lot of people might remember George Shearing, blind English pianist, came to the country, I think in the 50s. Armando Peraza played with him. Armando Peraza was one of the greatest Congo bongo drummers we've ever had in this country. There's like a little quartet of them. The usually starts with Chano Pozo, Bongo Santa Maria, Armando Peraza, Carlos Potato Valdez, Francisco Aguabella, Tatawini, Papaito, Julito Collazo, their whole collection of Afro-Cuban musicians. As a would-be conguero, I had to learn something about these people, get to know them. I got to know Armando Peraza one night going to a club in Chicago where he was playing with some Latin group. And I was stunned. I walked in, everybody was speaking Spanish, which was kind of curious to me because they were very dark people. And, you know, Cubans and Puerto Ricans and so forth. And he was sitting on the edge of the stage on a chair playing bongos like a piano. And, you know, I just came and stared. This was like 1952 or something like that. And I began to follow him. It seems that wherever he was at the time, he played with Cal Jada for about 10 or 12 years. And then most people know him from playing with Santana. He played with Santana for 17 years. But if he was in San Francisco and I was in California, I would go to San Francisco to catch him for a couple of times at the Matador Room or wherever. Over a period of time, you know, the guy had to notice me. Here's this this disciple sitting in the front row, checking out every move. Oh, this is how you do it. And we began to talk. You know, Armando was it's a cliche, but he was a force of nature. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could start talking to you about everything he had ever thought about, and it was logical and reasonable and made sense. For example, I asked him what he, you know, why did you pick the congos and the bongos to play? Somebody got to do it. I got to do it. Somebody got to do it. He never talked farther away than a couple of inches because I think he probably half deaf from having played with the bands and so forth over a lifetime. Anyway, I dedicated this particular little piece, vignette, to my friend Armando Parazza. Armando Parazza, an inland sea of African rhythms, self-preservation, and motion. Watching Armando play the congos one night at the lighthouse, I suddenly had the impression that he had become a god. It had nothing to do with the fact that he was playing 6/8 so fast that his hands were threatening to turn into black butter, or that his eyes had unplugged from their sockets and seemed to be focusing on a point beyond everyone's head. The God impression wasn't even reinforced by the illusion of him levitating behind the drums, that there was something else happening. That nebulous veil that incredible folks drop on you that allows you to fix your emotional thermometer on a certain degree was happening. He was opening up the gates to drum heaven, and we were tripping through in droves. Some of the women were crying as they stepped through. 2 African-American wage slaves, freed for the weekend, were rocking their heads back and forth in a sedentary dance, their neckties clenched in their teeth, their eyes closed with cosmic rage. Several white men fainted, unable to cope with the darkness of this paradise. It was impossible to determine how long he allowed us to remain in this place, but I'm certain that it ended at 2 a.m. because that's when the lighthouse turned on their lights. But like anything else before the lights came on, there was a beginning. Anybody remember that time frame when African Americans on the South Side used to go to do the mambo on Tuesday at McKee's, the mambo and the cha-cha-cha on Wednesday at McKee at Budland, the pachanga and merengue on Thursdays at the bar. Friday and Saturday might open up new floors to be stroked. Non-Spanish speakers chanted out the choruses to Anabacoco, Anabacoca, Anabacoco, Anabacoa, Trupapapatilla, Junca, Trupapapatilla, Junca, 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 Anabacoa, Cocoa, Anabacoa, Coa. Oh, sorry. Here's an example. Non-Spanish speakers chanted out the choruses to Anabacoa and Coco Seco as though they were spent the last century in the Jesus Maria district of La Habana. The scene was hot with Afro-Cuban, Puerto Rican, Brazilian, Venezuelan, Veracruz music. The Peps of 47 near St. Lawrence used to become an Afro-Cubano karmic barrio on some weekends. And into the middle of all this steps Armando Parazza. Well, actually, he wasn't stepping into anything. He was already there. I did the stepping. Hot night on the south side, humid, rank with sexual suggestiveness. One of those nights when all black women get oily and become queens. One of those kinds of evenings. Me just prowling the turf, watching the bright colors and absorbing the rhythms. The Trianon was a dance palace I'd never been in. I had stood outside watching the Fenian rainbow go in a couple of years. The Fenians were those gorgeously spaced out impersonators who drove up in Benzes, Bohams, Pink Hogs, and the like, gently touching the brazen arms of their proud escorts once a year. But I'd never been inside. I stood out to one side watching a parade of beautiful black people trip inside the Trianon. Beautiful black people, meaning that some of them were ivory colored. And after a few couples, discovered I couldn't really figure out what they were saying. Tito Puente was doing timbales and Parat was fingering the bongos like two round pianos. We had been listening to the music, we'd been dancing to the music, but we hadn't checked it out live. He sat on a chair near the stage apron, making castanet actions on the bongos. I wandered through the crowd, drawn by this small Afro-Cuban brother. I'd never seen anyone that proud. The pride was what you noticed first, the Earth One signal that asked, am I not unique? Is this not a special something that I'm doing? Sugar Ray Robinson had it, Manolete, Pele, he's a genius, Paul Robeson, Bob Marley, Babatunde, Olatunji, Richard Pryor in his salad days, a few others, Armando Parazza. I stood mesmerized at the lip of the stage. He was decent to me. He didn't give me the put-down look that a lot of horn players might have given, or some of the other ultra-hipsters might have laid on me. He smiled at my reactions, and during one wonderful role that lasted 5 minutes at least, he threw his head back and laughed, his front tooth sparkling with a fleck of gold at the chipped edge. There was nothing to say after the applause, nothing to do but begin to collect his art. I discovered him placing so many rhythmic possibilities behind George Shearing for 11 years that it dawned on me why George Shearing had become George Shearing. In between coming to know whenever his solo was going to happen on each cut, I moved to California. He, like all musicians, went to Japan, Florida, Spain, Germany, Scotland, and elsewhere. We checked back into each other in California. He was with Cal Jada, furnishing the vertebrated Jada was smart enough to supply himself with. Carlos Potato Valdez, Mongo, Julito Collazo, Papaito, Willie Bobo, Orestes Vilato, Francisco Ababella, Luis Camp, Chocolate, Almenteres, etc., etc., a whole bunch of guys. It would have been impossible to ignore me after all the years of seeing my face in the first row. He was a star of the Jada ensemble, but that wasn't apparent to some of Cal Jada's aficionados. It was almost painful to have to sit through 3 numbers that Bobby Hutcherson, Milt Jackson, and even Lionel Smiley Hampton would have worn Cal Jada's ass out on. Don't get me wrong, yes, Jada was an excellent musician. They were waiting for Amanda to come to the stage. It would not be an exaggeration to say on at least 3 occasions he was mounted on the stage. One evening, round about midnight, he had laid so much stuff out that the drums began to play themselves as he did a supernatural mambo off to the side. Boom, doom, doom, doom. Boom, doom, doom, doom. Boom, doom, doom, doom. Drum is right here.
Yeah.
We finally started dealing with each other head up. It happened while he was at the Lighthouse, once again doing the soul sauce with Jada. Wait for me after the set. I don't remember what I had to do or what may have mattered the morning after. None of it mattered. We ate stale slices of pie at Los Cocos on the beach strip and rapped. We drove back to the hotel he was staying at on the beach, and we rapped. Or rather, he rapped and rapped. We sat in the minute parking lot of his hotel as he rapped. His rapping was like his drumming, filled to the brim with counterpoint complexities, simultaneous calls, and self-evident responses. He spoke about the Cuba that gave birth to the need for Castro, not the man, the emotion. The days spent carrying water to men in the cane fields for 10 cents a day. 10 cents a day? You mean, that's what I said, my friend, 10 cents. When Havana was filled with bongos, and any street corner would give up a patato and a totico if you had the patience to listen. But I had to set a standard for me. El mejor, the best. And I thank him for, if you are the best, my friend, they cannot ignore you. Mm-hmm. They cannot. I'm trying to be my best. Okay, having done that, I would like to invite Zola Salena-Hawkins to join me here to explain something. Oh, look at all this stuff he's oh.
You're my husband. This is a surprise.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I haven't been friends.
Well,
okay.
let me, before we get into this bongo session. You're full of tricks.
Well, the thing is, you were talking about, I've had the pleasure of enjoying your companies.
Well,
since,
what a pleasant thing to hear a wife say to,
yes, okay.
to a husband.
Okay.
And I've enjoyed your company.
Why, thank you.
I am.
We got married in 2004. And Odie Hawkins has introduced me to so much more that I would not have met or been aware of. Okay, in so many ways. I mean, there's the bullfighting club that we belong to. It's called
Los Aficionados de Los Angeles.
Okay.
It's one of the oldest bullfight clubs in the country. Whether you like bullfighting or you hate it, that's your personal feeling, but it exists.
And I've gotten so I don't hide my face when the scenes get rather dramatic, but I've enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And learning how to play the pandera.
In English, they call it the tambourine. Okay, we're getting into the capoeira scene. We'll save that for another time. What I wanted to do.
I wanted you to play.
Okay, here's the thing with the cans. I'm an amateur drummer, and from time to time, I find myself playing drums intensely because it helps you.
But the cans have a history.
Oh, okay.
This man used to play the cans when he was 8 years old. 10 years old, okay? So when he got the cans, and he's always doing something that I'm totally amazed with. Kelly, what is he going to do now? Okay? He put the cans, and then he was trying to glue them together, and so I suggested, well, why don't you use the pencils? And he did the pencils and the glue, and he got his cans, and I'm like, so where does this go? And it goes to music.
Okay, since you brought them up, I'm going to tap on them a little bit, but this is what we used to play in Chicago. The better cans would be the large tomato cans.
Mm-hmm. But the fruit cans,
I picture this as something like the tin, what do you call it? The steel pan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That the West Indians started doing. We were doing it in cans, and I pick a rhythm. You too may be able to play the can.
You may be able to play the can.
Find a pencil.
Right. If you can't get the can't afford bongos, be creative. Get a couple of cans, wash it out good, glue them with the pencil,
Oh, this is funny.
little binder clip, and there you go. You've got 10 bongos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? And this is what children were able to do at one time before the...
When they were being given something to do rather than given things.
Right, like the
Like
too much on the internet or you know, on their phones and videos, just being creative. And you know, for those who have children or who have children involved in their lives, help them be creative so that at 82,
Yeah, I knew I called you here for a reason.
they can still be creative.
I can tell you just a brief story. Can I use those?
Yes, please.
I was teaching in a program in LA called Ports in Schools, and the idea behind it was to take your talent and go and teach kids, you know, how they could tap into it. And I did this on a couple of occasions. I had separate cans because I thought the two would be too much for the little kids. They were 4th, 5th, 6th grade, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I asked, you play this, and you play. And they sat there, it was about 25, 30, and they sat there and looked at me.
Oh, wow.
It was so sad, you know, I mean, this little boy came in.
How's the music coming out?
Yeah.
Okay, you know.
You know, like, what was in the cans? Well, there were green peas in this one, and I think it was corn in this one.
Well, you know, as you explained to me, once he was at a park, and he was playing his drum, and some teenagers came up, and you asked them, did they play any instruments?
I have a beautiful djembe given to me by my friend John Otterbridge, who's the former director of the Watchtower's Art Center. Please go on.
Okay, and so the kids looked at him, and they said, "We don't play nothing, mister. Only the radio."
Only the radio.
That is very sad.
And if you think about it, we're living here in California, you used to be able to go to Athens Park, and there would be drummers there. I think you could still go to Griffith Park on Sunday if you didn't find a place to park, and there might be drummers. But these guys, by and large, have been playing the same thing for the last 30 years. So you can't play different styles if you start playing a samba. Yeah. You can't play samba, you can't play wawanko. You can't play different rhythms from different places because all they know, we call it the Griffith Park Shuffle.
Yes. Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And so, like I'm saying, if you have children in your life, or just enjoy some of the things that you used to do when you were a kid. I mean, there's
before your thumbs became
locked onto to the phone. All right, and
you might be play bongos with your thumbs. Try that. Try that.
This is true. And so, even though there's you're about 11 years older than I, 10 and a half. I remember growing up and hearing the boys on the corner playing the bongos or the conga drums.
In New Jersey, right?
In New Jersey, Hackensack, New Jersey. And, you know, I was told, be careful of those boys playing on the corner and do not stop to talk to them. Okay, keep walking. But, you know, still in the back of my mind, I can recall some of them were very talented. And maybe they got caught into doing the wage earner thing and they lost their dream. So this is a new decade, and this is the sixth video.
The sixth?
Sixth, yes. This is the 7th day. This is the 6th video. I'm saying that the new decade is early enough for people to grab a hold of that old dream and do something about it before Father Time takes you away.
Got to do it. I wanted to. I've mentioned that these are my two friends. Palmer on the left shoulder and Ralph on the right. I'm in the center. And of course, as usual, the photographer was none other than
I'm hoping
none other than Zola Salena-Hawkins.
Right. It was a pleasurable day. I'm not sure where Yvonne was. Oh, I think she was sitting on the side.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was lovely. Lovely. Ralph, a great singer, and Palmer is very, very strong. He could still handle with his football. I could imagine playing football with him. It would be quite a pain.
He could cause a lot of pain.
A lovely person, and his wife, Verna.
Well, as you can see, this is what we're doing. These are the books. These are the books that I've written, and I'm making an effort to introduce you to one at a time in between all of the other things that we're doing, because books are not written in a vacuum, which brings us to our latest African treasure. You want to give a little hit to this one?
This one is a picture type. It's not as heavy as some of the other items.
It's heavy.
But it is heavy, and it's quite beautiful. It's, you see, a lid, and it's one of the treasures that Mother Queen Jewel gave us. And I can imagine, once you put something in it, it might be a little more harder to...
Can you imagine having a beer out of this? It would
Yes.
probably ruin your day.
But this is a ram, I think.
That's a ram.
Ram, okay, both a ram on the bottom and for the lid, and a ram for the pouring. And it's another beautiful treasure that my mother, Queen Jewel Gray, gave us as
going away present, I think.
I think a going away present.
She was 92 when she died, and she didn't do it with regret. She didn't make people feel like, oh, I'm going away and isn't it terrible? She had a really full life, and I loved her to death.
And she was
blessed. No pun intended.
She was blessed by a wonderful husband, Dr. Ronald Gray, who made her life very happy.
Joel!
He's still trying.
He's a psychiatrist from South Carolina, and I would never be able to duplicate it exactly, but I never heard anybody say a person's name, Jewel, is 2 syllables, right? He could almost sing it.
Yeah.
Jewel!
Yes, indeed.
Jewel!
Very beautiful.
Honey, baby, sweets. I never heard so many sweet things in my life. Jewel, baby, honey, you want some? Whoa.
Yes, indeed. And I must not forget my sister Melanie and her husband Bruce and Bella, the daughter, and Reggie and Teresa.
Yeah.
And another sister, Kimberly, and a nephew, Franklin.
You can keep going.
Trying to go on with family. This is a year to find out who your family are. And
that's a good one.
Okay, yeah, you know that.
You might have some artifacts in the background you
right,
never know.
Okay, or relatives that you really would like to know. Okay.
Keep looking, and I guarantee you keep reading, and you might find a book by Odie and Hawkins in your attic. You wouldn't find this one because it just came out. We'll get to this one tomorrow evening or tomorrow. Once again, the photograph is by Zola Salena-Hawkins.
And the books can be purchased on Amazon, okay? Or you can Google Odie Hawkins and see the rest of his YouTubes and find out what he's been doing with his life and his partner.
I'm here. I'm offering it to you. Is what I'm doing.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, and Zola. Thank you. That's a trippy surprise.
Well, when you told me I wasn't getting dressed up today for our world tour.
You dressed up every day.
Oh, well, thank you, kind sir. We'll go on with that one. On that happy note, I'm going this way.
Ciao.
Ciao. And?
Ashe.
Ashe.